Good morning to most, good afternoon to others, and good evening to the viewing audience across the pond. I am your host, Jason Miles, here for another episode of Pop Life, brought to you by the wonderful people of this Revolution podcast. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Glad to have you here. If you like what you're hearing, please hit like and subscribe. It's a passive gesture that goes a long way in promoting the channel. If you are a returning listener or one of our very valued patrons, so glad to have you back. Before I bring in the guest tonight, I just want to remind everyone that we will be doing our regularly scheduled show at 6 p.m. Pacific time, where we'll be talking with leftist comic artist Matt Bors about his venture with the Toxic Avenger. Yes, the Toxic Avenger is back. As you know, there's been a remake of the movie. After the main show tonight at 6 p.m., we will be watching the original Toxic Avenger. So make sure you check in for that as well. I have some very special guests today. Yesterday, they were supposed to come in, but they had some difficulties. They are preparing a tour. This is the first time in a long time they have toured. I'm looking at them right now in the virtual green room as we get ready to bring them in. Please welcome from San Diego, the very influential, the chaotic, the artfully masterful, the Swing Kids. Please welcome John, Jose, and Justin of Swing Kids. Thank you guys for taking the time to talk to me today. For those that don't know who you guys are, you guys have been around for 30 years doing this crazy, chaotic music. And you guys come from an interesting part of the country. You come from San Diego, and you're not really influenced so much by the sounds of Los Angeles. And for those that don't know, Los Angeles is about 2 hours and change, depending on the traffic and how deep in San Diego County that you live. San Diego is the second largest city in California and the second largest county. It is a massive piece of land to drive through when trying to get out of it. But when I listen to your music, I don't hear any of the influence of the sounds that were coming out of Los Angeles at that time. And in the mid-90s, we have the emergence of what will later be called nu metal. That kind of is the sound of LA. I mean, early on with that music, they called it LA metal. And you guys are doing something totally independent of that. What is the scene like in the late 80s, early 90s when you guys are putting the band together in San Diego?
Violent.
But it's so sunny.
I mean, one consistent thing was definitely there was a lot of violence going on at shows, and not so much at well, I mean, I guess there was some, like at the Che Cafe, which was like the big the all ages venue that is still around, but certainly like a lot of other things. And there was a show in Claremont that Scott Bertoloni had set up or whatever, and like, you know, a group of like skinheads just showed up and like shut the show down and started tearing off with everyone's amps and everything, just
stealing everyone's amps.
Yeah. I don't remember who. I wasn't at that one. It's just one of those ones I've heard about a number of times. But yeah, I mean, pretty much like everybody I know, like at one point or another, got beat up or attacked or something. And
by skinheads or by cops?
Skinheads mostly. Yeah. The cops, it was less of an issue. They would show up and shut down shows that weren't. They were just like house shows, things like that. But you know, they couldn't really mess with the Che Cafe because it was on the UCSD campus.
Mm-hmm.
And more or less sanctioned. It's had its battles over the years with university administrators and everything, but it's still hanging in there for almost
So
40.
that was that kind of ground zero for up and coming bands?
It became so, and there was a at one point a pushback against the violence there, and it became more of a safe space, and it still is, to this day. So.
Did you want to add anything, Jose or Justin?
I think that San Diego was violent due to the close proximity to Fallbrook, which was like the start of White Aryan resistance. In the early 90s, there was a lot of neo-Nazi skinheads, and there was, that kind of like element also in relation to San Diego being a border town. So there was just an intense amount of obviously racist bullshit. But, I think that kind of filtered into the communities in San Diego. And I think that it also affected people, since San Diego is geared up as like a tourist city and not really set up like Los Angeles or something that's for music or arts. So we had to kind of redefine what we were doing, I guess, which is before the term DIY culture, but like before, we had to kind of like figure out a way to maintain some sort of community and art community, I guess, on our own terms. So that would be why weird sounding stuff came out of San Diego, in my opinion, out of punk or whatever you want, or hardcore. So yeah, I don't know, but it was violent, unfortunately. So.
One thing we talk about a lot of this show, I played music up north in the Bay Area, which is a very different environment than San Diego. But one of the things that I think maybe all of us had, because we were of a certain age and a certain time, was these kind of third spaces where, and we're also of a time before the internet, right? So you could make music and like figure it out, right? There were these places you could go play at that would let inexperienced bands come and kind of hone their craft, if you will. And for you, that was the Shea Cafe.
Yeah, it was the most consistent because it was the one place that could exist without being shut down. The only other all ages venue in town was Soma, which
that's a pretty big room.
Has a lot of. It was smaller then. It was in downtown San Diego at that point. There's a lot of baggage around that space. The owner,
the baggage was, the owner was trying to shut down all other all ages clubs, and he had a problem with drugs and eliciting underage sex and stuff like that. So yeah, that guy was kind of a piece of shit. Still is, I guess. But so yeah, baggage would be like a kind term, like fuck that guy and fuck Soma, and so we never played there.
Was it a lot of house shows and backyard stuff too?
Yeah.
Those were the ones that were getting shut down, where you have the cops show up.
Because you were lowering everyone's property value.
Yeah.
Your loud guitars.
I'm sure that was part of it. And, I don't know how true it is or not true, whether, it was neighbors alerting people, but, they, the word around was that the owner of Soma was, close with San Diego Vice Squad, and he was, keeping tabs on these all ages shows, and he was like sending, tipping off the police, hey, go shut this place down, because it was like direct competition to his venue.
I've heard that with other venue owners, even up north where I'm from.
Yeah, I've never confirmed it, but it would not surprise me at all if it was entirely true.
That's a little more common than people think in show business, especially, hey, they're at capacity over there. Call the fire department. Jeez. Shut those people down. Yeah. I won't get into the stories I've even experienced with stuff like that. But as far as pretty much,
yeah,
yeah, monopolize the scene. What is the band that inspired you guys to even want to put a band together? Who came down your way where you guys were like, you know what, we can do this too?
No one came down our way. It was Drive Like Jehu, and I think our band just ripped them off. So I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah, I mean, there was some older people in San Diego, 5-6 years older than us, doing a lot of really great music, going back Pitchfork and Drive Like Jehu, and they were pretty strong influences on what we did musically. I think where we differed is that there was a bit more of kind of a deeper personal reflection and also connection to San Diego's place in relation to the border and how that affects our lives and how it affects San Diego in general.
How does it affect your lives living so? Because I live on the other side. I've never lived in San Diego. I went from the Bay Area all the way to Mexico. But how does it affect your guys? How does it shape the sound for you guys?
I live in Tijuana now. I've been down in Tijuana for almost 7 years, I think. And
Where we met?
Nearly every day. And it's something it's really interesting to see the disconnect between the reality of the border and living in Tijuana and the contrast between San Diego and Tijuana, and then read about what people in the rest of the U.S. think about Mexico and what the border is like and how the transit across the border works. So, I feel like I have a very different kind of perspective that, most people can never really have. And I just hear the most ridiculous nonsense all the time about it from other parts of the country. And often, the questions that I get asked, the most ridiculous, absurd, and racist questions I get about Mexico and border life come not from MAGA people, conservatives, but from liberals.
Oh, definitely.
So
definitely. Jose, did you want to add anything?
I think the question was related to the context that made Swing Kids cultural production at that time, and what influenced me in my playing was Pete Wilson and Prop 187, Save Our State, 1994, which was to turn every cop, every school teacher, and every doctor, nurse into an agent of what we're now seeing as ICE. And it wanted to pass basically this new legislation. What was happening was that there was an operation called Operation Gatekeeper, which launched in San Diego in 1994 to fortify the boundary. And part of that was also trying to get California on board with that. It was the Democrats and the Republicans trying to see who was going to out-pig themselves. And that was Wilson's response to Clinton 96. You got to remember, Clinton in 96 passed the welfare law, the anti-terrorism law, and the immigration bill. So he was the one that started this whole thing. It was under the Democrats. So what influenced me was just being on the fucking trolley and having Border Patrol agents round people up, and nobody said anything. And I, at that time, was still trying to fix my papers because I was born in Tijuana.
Wow.
So it's not like I was trying to get my ass arrested. So, I'd seen these movies before where people were good Nazis and good Germans, and they just looked the other way when people were being dragged out, kind of what we're seeing now. So that was a precursor. That was a preface to what we're seeing now. And so that's what influenced my playing in Swing Kids in the 90s.
Justin?
Man, I don't know. Like, I think that there was that pressure. Like, all of my friends, you know, that were people of color were struggling with this extra thing that, like, I had, you know, as a white person couldn't fully experience. And I saw, I don't know, like, not only economics hardships, but just social hardships. And then, um, being a teenager or in my early 20s, just trying to filter that through some sort of art form. Maybe it wasn't very nuanced, but I think me and my friends are trying to just create something that we could use to communicate to people. And maybe the communication wasn't, maybe it was a bit abstract, and it wasn't like, we were just a band, making music. We weren't, as Swing Kids weren't actually like changing, I don't know. It's like an existential examination of what we were doing as a band. Like, yeah, we would play benefits for certain charities or organizations that we supported and stuff, and we were just playing music essentially to younger people, but we weren't influencing necessarily propositions or laws. We weren't really changing things in a sense, but we were part of a community that was communicating to other people, and maybe through music and art we were giving some sort of hope, or I don't know what the exact word is, maybe just making it able to articulate feelings, and yeah, again, like, I guess an overall community with other people that were like-minded to try to change things.
I mean, it's an interesting time to be putting a band together in the climate that you guys are in. And if we get in the Wayback Machine and think about the 90s, there's not a lot of, especially this moment in the 90s, the mid 90s, hip hop has been kind of taken over by a more lifestyle brand, if you will, with what kind of becomes G-funk, or what some people might call gangster rap, but they're not really killing everybody in a song. It's just these lifestyle tunes about the ghetto. And where is quote unquote important rock music? The grunge guys were doing arenas, and that's a real kind of self-reflecting music itself. So when I think about you, Jose, bringing up Prop 187, of the musicians I talked to that existed during that time, you're the first person that has even mentioned it, because I think for a lot of people, even guys from California, it's a historic blip in the radar that didn't mean anything to them. But it sounds like where you guys are coming from, it means a lot more.
Yeah, it seems like California is always leading the way in the nation, and so they're always testing shit out here. Right now, currently in the Bay Area today, right now we're at JP's house in San Diego, but my friends and my homies are texting me about what's going on right now in the Bay Area with an ICE operation that currently 200 federal agents based out of the Coast Guard, Alameda Island, getting ready to do their thing in the Bay. So 2 people have already been harmed by the ICE agents. One guy had his foot run over by a fucking car, and
Jesus.
a priest was shot in the face by a fucking flashbang grenade. So shit's going down already. That what happened in 1994 was a precursor to what we're seeing now.
Did you want to add anything, John?
No.
I do.
This is way more serious than we thought we were going to be at 10 a.m.
I think that like, even with Prop 187 before that, like, Jose and I were down trying to deal with like the campaign called Light Up the Border, which was Roger Hedgecock, San Diego mayor at the time's like political stunt to I think illuminate the border issues, and so there would be like all these white nationalists going down to the border and like shining their car headlights or having reflective stuff and pulling these like sort of media stunts to try to bring attention to immigration issues. And it was this was before I guess the Klan hoods were pulled off, so it was kind of like this sort of under the radar racist rhetoric that would be sort of in the faces of everyone in mainstream society in San Diego. So that was like kind of for me, that was like kind of the first real like uh, I don't know, like alarm being sounded, like, oh yeah, there's like total fucked up racist shit happening. And then it was Prop 187 that followed that and kind of opened the floodgates. And this is also like right around the time of the first Gulf War too. So there was, you know, being a military city, we have this like military stronghold here, and so there's just this huge presence of not only like the pigs, but like racist politicians, racist policies, and then also just military in general. So I think it created like a lot of intensity and a lot of anxiety for people that were people of color, but also just people that were, you know, progressive and I guess on the left or actual real left, kind of like leaning individuals, and it just affected everybody in San Diego for sure.
Did those people, JP, show up at random different events at Chicano Park? It was some of the same like light up the border people, like with Roger Hedgecock and I don't remember some of the other names, but
The head that was leading that was a woman by the name of Muriel Watson, who was the wife of an ex-Border Patrol agent who died. And the important footnote to this, I'm sure JP remembers, is that people went to the border with mirrors to shine the headlights back at the faces of these racist crackers to fucking show that, you know, you're trying to shine the light on them, but we're having mirrors here. And it was pretty cool, pretty interesting. Some of the people that were involved in that too was a group by the name of Border Arts Workshop that was by Guillermo Gomez Peña and some of the other artists in the border connection with Chicano Park. And so they did a lot of amazing artwork on the border. At one point, Gomez Peña crucified himself on the border to document, you know, what was happening to migrants. At another point, they established a door on the fence itself, made a hole, put a door there, and gave keys to people in Tijuana and told people to cross with dignity. On the other hand, they got some like $5,000 grant and they cashed it all in ones and they gave it to people in Tijuana in $1 bills. So it was just too crazy shit like that, which I thought was pretty cool. But people were resisting these reactionaries and these fascists. They were also up in Encinitas County. They were going into the migrant camps and just fucking with them, shooting at them with BB guns.
That doesn't make it better, but yeah, it's
No, but
yeah.
Stuff like
A
that.
lot of that shit in like the North County was like younger people too, like just shithead kids, you know, like just like teenage white dicks, you know. It's fucking crazy when all that shit was happening, because they were like these fucking shitty young kids like fucking with adults that were there trying to work a terrible wage for, you know,
literally in encampments because they
Yeah.
couldn't afford anything else, and they would.
So amongst all this, you guys are trying to start a band. And I know you're not sitting in a room saying we're going to create a genre of music. I don't know if anyone ever says that. And if they do, they probably suck. I think people try to do what they think is cool. And maybe along the way, you create something that no one's ever heard before. I was reacquainting myself with your catalog yesterday. And my first thought was, I'm not much younger than these dudes. What the fuck was going through their minds? When they were like, what prompted you to want to open up that early EP with piano and really kind of mix in this idea of jazz? Where does the name even come from?
I think for me, I mean, me and Jose and Eric Allen, our original guitar player, were in a band called Struggle, and it was very overtly political. And I think at least I just remember having conversations with Eric and how we were kind of trying to figure out a way to not be, because like we were just very, again, like the politics were jarring to some people, and also like, you know, we were pretty much speaking to the choir in a sense, playing at like the venues that like the Che Cafe or something. So we were trying to find a way to kind of break away and do something different. And at the same time, there was this shift in punk and hardcore in San Diego where people were kind of doing a lot of different stuff. And the sort of punk and hardcore scene that we were involved in, which was centered around this record label Ebullition, was almost your quintessential sort of conservative structure of like a community. Like you had to kind of look a certain way, you had to sound a certain way, you had to do certain things, and if you didn't do that, you were kind of made fun of or not part of the community or whatever. And so we sort of drew our own line in the sand there and did that, because I remember the first show we ever played as Swing Kids was in Goleta, and the person that owned the record label that our previous band Struggle was on was there just mocking us, you know, and it was like, all right, well, like we figured out like who our family is really, and I think that at that time, also too, another factor I think that kind of is important to acknowledge with Swing Kids were like we were coming from this sort of 90s way of like what hardcore was at the time, which is very macho and very aggressive, and we were trying to find a way to change our own trajectory. And so this is like the start of the Riot Grrrl movement, the start of like I don't know, like I guess what is now considered emo and stuff. So there was like a shift in things to kind of change this sort of I don't know, like patriarchal thing, which was like the antithesis of what I thought punk was. So that was like a huge shift for us. And so we were like trying to find ways to integrate other elements of art and be, you know, I don't know what the right word is. Like we wanted to fuck with people, but we also wanted to try to be righteous and keep true to our sense, you know? So we were trying to find this thing that was like almost like a mixture of like, fuck, I don't know, like, you know, Crass and Albert Eiler. I don't know. And so we ended up getting this like weird hodgepodge of stuff, you know. I would say Crass, Albert Eiler, and Drive Like Jehu were like the things that like really honed in on what Swing Kids were, and without even being conscious of that, we were just trying to find our weird teenage influences and spew out something that was a cathartic, you know, release of life, I guess, that we were living.
I find it really interesting that the genre tags that came out, you know, long after we started doing it, you know, emo, screamo, scrams, whatever. I don't even know what all of you do it as, but it's because for us to kind of go with what JP was saying, we were just hardcore punk. That was it. That was all we ever referred to. But it was our definition of what hardcore punk meant to us. And yeah, it was different from the hardcore punk that came before, but because we were, you know, trying not to follow along with the macho bullshit that was going on and do something a little bit different and pull in some other influences. But it wasn't like what you said, Jason. It wasn't like thinking, oh, we're creating a new genre. Just this is how we're doing hardcore punk with what is influencing us.
No, I don't think anyone gets in a room and says, let's make a genre. Again, I think that person probably sucks. Like you just do what you think is cool, and your interpretation of Drive Like Jehu isn't going to be Drive Like Jehu. It's your interpretation of it, right? It's through your sensibilities, which are not their sensibilities. I was in a group where it was me and my ex, and we both loved Bjork and Massive Attack, and we were going to be a heavier version of that, and we created something that didn't sound anything like those people. And I think that's just how this stuff goes. But you guys are lumped into the screamo emo category because there is a lot of that coming out. And I think there's something interesting that you guys are hitting on about these cultures of authenticity that exist in these communities that market themselves as being so open and welcoming. And it sounds like when you do something truly original, they're not so open and welcoming. Does that force you guys to go even harder in a crazy direction?
I would say yes, for sure. But for me, like when we started this band, it was like the term emo was maybe Rites of Spring and Fugazi, which I think are both largely influential, bands in this world. I guess that was like the start of that. But I think all the terms for genres that come out are terrible.
What if someone put a gun to your head and said, what do you guys are? Would you just say we're just punks?
No, I always say annoying. I mean, it is set up to be like kind of jarring musically. It's not like, I mean, it makes sense. It speaks to people. Obviously, we and everybody that does music does that for a reason. But when we were setting out to do it, it wasn't supposed to be nice, And luckily, we set it up for bands like Refused or something to kind of go ahead and cash in on it. But we were kind of trying to just focus on creating, again, like a form of communication to people, part of a community, and do something that we thought was like, I guess, relevant. But I mean, at the time, there wasn't a concept of the future. We were kind of just living in the moment, trying to figure out what to do right then and right there. And we didn't think about what will the longevity of this band be, what will the effects of this band be, and we just kind of did what we did and did it for like that moment.
And that moment doesn't last very long for you guys as a band. You guys do a few projects. Was it 2 EPs?
It was a 7-inch EP, a split EP, and then like a couple, and then a song, and then one extra song, and then we did a single later on after Eric passed away with Jimmy Lavelle on guitar.
So you sadly lost a member.
Yes.
Jose moves up north, and people go their separate ways, but you guys don't stop making music as individuals.
Yeah, we've all played in a number of other bands since the initial run of Swing Kids in the mid 90s.
Were your services requested? Was it like, oh, John from Swing Kids is free, let's get him in this band? Or did you guys have to audition? How had the Swing Kids momentum helped propel the future projects for the ones that she's in?
I guess, I mean, no, I mean, the connections are mostly just people I know from playing music over the years. I along at the same time as Swing Kids, I was playing in Spanacorzo, and Spanacorzo toured around the U.S. a couple of times. We met Sweep the Leg Johnny, which was the next band that I joined, and they were based out of Chicago. And in 98, I decided, I kind of had enough of San Diego. I needed to get away. I moved to Chicago. And I just happened to move right next door to two of the guys in Sweep the Leg Johnny. And their bass player quit literally the same month that I moved there. And I ran into the two guys just at the bar down the street. And they said, hey, we need a bass player. Why don't you come over and try out? And I said, sure. And I showed up, and it was basically just like, oh, you showed up, you're in the band. There wasn't really any tryout or anything like that. And I don't think they had anybody else in mind. I think it was just they knew me. They knew I had played bass, and yeah, sure, you're in. With my current band based out of Tijuana, Agonista, that's just I was asked by our guitarist, Fernie, to join the band. And he's somebody, I met him. He's a bit younger than us, 40, like 5 years younger than me. Mm-hmm. I met him when he was just a, punk kid going to shows when he was like 16 or something. So, and he's just somebody I've known forever who's played in other local bands. And he just said, hey, looking for a bass player. And at the time, Nate, who plays with us in Swing Kids, was playing in the band. And that was a huge draw for me to join the band. I was like, oh, I'd love to play with Nate again. And he's since left, but still continuing with them.
And Justin, you went on to do a few music projects yourself.
I think that I did, but I think everything was kind of there was no linear perspective of things. So like it wasn't like Swing Kids was a good resume builder. No one at the time gave a shit. It was kind of just like we were friends with someone else, and so we would start music. I mean, I think Jose can contest that as well. Like when he moved to the Bay Area, we just had friends. It wasn't like, oh my God, it's the guy from Swing Kids. It was like, oh, these are my friends. We'll just play music together. So, at the time I started playing in the Locust, and that existed alongside Swing Kids for a minute. And then that kind of became my thing for 20 years after that. So.
You guys exist before I mean, the internet is around, but it's not as ubiquitous. We don't have social media when you guys are starting. How has that changed in your perspective, the way scenes are built and the way music is even created? Is it a help? Is it a hindrance? Is it a little bit of both?
I'll say I think it's both. I think that there is an element of it's lacking an element of like being more special. Like for me, when I was younger and there was no internet, to discover something, if you discovered something that was truly unique and spoke to you, it had a lot of value to it. Where now you can kind of just Google everything and have access to everything. So there's it's good and it's bad, I guess. I think it. I don't want to sound like a 50-year-old, crotchety musician. I mean, it has its perks and it has its hindrances, I suppose, in certain ways. Yeah.
John and Jose?
I'm just looking forward to the day when AI can take over my soul.
Well, it's funny you say that. Tuesday, I spoke with a young man that wrote a book on artificial intelligence. And it's somewhat utopian, but he definitely had fears. And some of those things that we talked about on the show was, there still has to be a human element in creation. But what we're seeing now is a lot of copying. Again, I think we're from a generation where originality means a lot. If you sound like someone else, you're a biter. You're a poser. That's not cool. Sounding like someone else is commonplace. Moving down here, I've heard a lot of different sounding things, but I think it's because I hear so many young people trying to figure it out. But oftentimes when I go back up north in the States and I hear younger bands, it's like, oh, you sound like this thing. And there was even a moment in the CD selling era when people would put a sticker on the CD for fans of. Like, if you're looking for a thing, this is the same thing with a different haircut. Is that just as much of a problem? Because that got fed into these AI systems, and so they can spit out music that sounds just like, I don't know, lilting voice, white chick with acoustic guitar. Like, there's so many of that AI can spit out a replicant. I don't know if AI can spit out a Swing Kids. In any of the bands you guys have existed in, I don't know if AI can spit out a replicant because there's just not so much of it to learn from.
I think when I discovered stuff like streaming services where they would kind of make a channel or a station that was like paired up, I was so intrigued, and so this is. For me, I would just be like, oh, let's put on the Locust and see what it says is similar. And I would just about 80% of what it chose, I would just be like bombed on, and I'd be like, this is fucking this sucks. But I think it's because maybe I can probably speak for everybody in Swing Kids. I think we're all a little highbrow with what we think is good art, and that's and also it's subjective. Like what is good or what's relevant or what's equivalent is gonna differ from one person to the next. But I think that having a sticker on your record that says for fans of, I mean, if you're controlling that and you're saying like or featuring members of that, it also makes sense. But when it's an algorithm that's like for fans of, there's another element there that might lack a sort of personal touch. It's an industry standard telling you these are similar things, and the metadata is similar, but to people that are part of a culture, be it punk and hardcore or whatever you want to call it, that I think they'll hopefully have a different opinion on that and maybe a different standard.
There is this. Oh, go ahead.
I use Tidal for streaming service.
Oh, talk about highbrow. Look at this guy. I use Tidal.
So I can't speak to Spotify and how the algorithm might work there. And I don't think the Tidal algorithm for suggestions is very good. I would say about 1 out of every 100 suggestions I get from Tidal is something that I'm like, oh, okay, this is good. Whereas everything else, I'm like, skip, forget this. I get more good recommendations from friends in my my friend community as to what's good, or I just happen to go to a show in Tijuana and see a band that blows my mind that I had never heard of before. So I can't say that the algorithms are doing much of anything for me. But
will you guys be coming down to TJ to play at all?
It's not in the plans right now.
What do I have to do? Do I have to get a petition?
Jose, you should probably say something about that.
I just want to make sure ICE lets me get back into the country.
That's fair.
We'll see.
Not that it's not like important, but like fuck, I don't know. As a white person, it's gonna be fucked. But like I worry about my comrade Jose. Like, what if he doesn't get back? Like fuck that. Like, it's not, no offense to TJ, but it's not worth going there and playing and having one of my best friends have his life uprooted. That's way more of a concern. But I'd like to go back to the streaming thing for a second, because I think like I don't need a fucking algorithm telling me like you should also listen to this. I would rather, I don't know, I don't stream music, so I'd rather just find something cool and organic and have it make sense than like the almighty algorithm pointing something out. But let's talk about the border and talk about what we were just saying about playing down there, and I don't know, Jose's concerns or anybody's concerns.
I mean, it's interesting because I don't go to tons of shows. Like, I'm old and I have all the old people. I met John not knowing there was a show at a mall, at an underground mall in Tijuana. And yeah, at a bakery. That's Tijuana for you. It's kind of awesome in that regard, right? That people can throw shows anywhere. And I've seen shows in alleyways that kind of blew my mind, where kids can just do what they want to do. But it's that cultural exchange that I think makes music scenes stronger when we get the ability to travel. I think everybody here on the screen has been in various parts of the world playing music, and there's something that we pick up, there's something we find interesting that maybe has a subconscious influence on the music that we make, maybe when we come back home. And to start cutting that off, I think it is scary just from the artistic side of things. When you go to, again, a city like San Diego, it's just so intertwined with the country of Mexico below it that it's kind of a megalopolis, if you will, because of all the commuters, first and foremost, that live in Tijuana, that work in the U.S., and they don't all look like John.
Definitely don't look like John.
No,
look at this motherfucker.
So people should really be weary, not just of the Gestapo-like tactics, which should be infuriating. There's a reason why people are in the streets, but it's this kind of absence of the fact that culture isn't static. It's not this thing that stays just like this. It's always changing. You go to Mexico City, there is an influence of other countries because it's an international city, and that influence comes out in the food, right? Which gets me into this kind of next question I want to ask you, which is about authenticity and these ideas of authenticity. Do you guys feel that? Because there's also another thing that goes next to authenticity, which is selling out. And no one's been on a major label, correct?
No.
No.
What?
Is that a conscious decision?
I don't think it's ever been an option for me.
There was a point where the Locust was in being contacted by major labels, but we opted to release stuff on Anti, which is a subsidiary of Epitaph, which is, hands down probably the biggest independently owned label. But yeah, we were very conscious and cautious about our choices and who to work with.
Mm-hmm. Just from that standpoint of you just want a certain amount of control over the music and the control of the image that goes out with it as well.
That is an important aspect, but I think also, I mean, I've dealt with independent labels that were run by stupid people. I don't want to name them, but like, I put out music on a label run by a billionaire who's like now in cahoots with the Trump administration, and that's a fucking bummer. Who hides under the guise of punk, I think that's a concern. But yeah, I think for me and I guess everybody else in this band, like we've been aware and at least put thought into like our actions, be it whatever form of corporate music or capitalism, in general.
Jason, I have a question for you. How are you defining authenticity?
I don't really have a definition for it because I don't know what it is, right? Okay. Like, for example, I was having a conversation with a fella that was going on and on about the 90s alt rock scene, and they meant the grunge bands, right? I think that's more of a fashion aesthetic than it is a sonic style of music. That's just my opinion. And juxtaposing it to the glam bands, again, I feel the same way about that era as well. And he was saying that they were more authentic. And I was like, in what way? They had managers, they had record labels, they had stylists, they had all the same thing these other bands had. Their drug use was used as a marketing tool to make them more authentic. It's just marketing at that point, and it's just what you dig. But I don't know. Do you think Motley Crue wasn't feeling Shout at the Devil any more than Soundgarden was feeling Super Unknown? I don't know. I don't know what was going through their mind. I'm sure they both thought they were really good records. I'm sure they were both trying to sell a lot of records. They both were on major labels. They didn't release them out of some guy's label in a garage. They weren't selling them hand to hand at shows. So what makes one more authentic than the other, I think boils down to what you value as authenticity more so than this overarching authenticity. It's like, for example, if someone came to you guys and said, I dig your Warsaw cover and I want to use it for an ad for Levi's. Here's $100,000. Do you say, no, fuck Levi's because you make some of your jeans in places like Bangladesh where people die in garment factories? Or do you take the $100,000 and do something positive with it, or continue to make more good music? I don't know. I don't know what the right decision would be at that point.
They don't do anything because we don't want Joy Division to sue us.
But I think that's a good question. I mean, I think there was that incident where Chumbawamba did that. They were given they were used in a car commercial, and so they took all of the money and gave it to the opposition. I guess the car commercial was doing something. I don't know the specifics of it. I'm sure people could fucking Google it, but they were. I think the fact that they thought about it and thought because I know if we were given $100,000 to use our cover of a song, that would be something we should discuss. and if they didn't use ours, they would go to the next band and then that band would get it. And what would that band do with that money? Like, we don't know what that band is. So I don't know. I think it's a good question to pose to people. I think it's interesting, especially when you talk about classism and class struggle. What could swing kids do with $100,000 compared to, like, again, I'll just go ahead and fucking say it, but like, what could Refuse do with $100,000? I think it's going to be drastically different. I think where the effects of what happens with that $100,000 is going to be fucking massively different. And I think that's something that, I don't know, acknowledge. But also going back to the topic of like major labels and stuff, I think there's bands like, and I think musically they're terrible, but I think that Pearl Jam is such a huge force in major label music with their politics and how they run as a business. I think it's a relevant thing to bring up. I think it's something to pay attention to. Kind of like how, I mean, I guess a more righteous version of what they do is like how, you know, Fugazi ran their band and Discord Records in the same way, you know, like having Coachella ask Fugazi to play, and they said, you know, for like whatever millions of dollars, and they said, no, the next time we play, it's going to be for free in DC. That's a pretty righteous thing. It's also like such a privileged thing for a band to say, because if someone was like, yo, we're going to give Swing Kids $500,000 to fucking play, you know, Elon Musk's birthday party, I'd be like, fuck, maybe we should do it because I'm broke as fuck, you know. Am I gonna like Elon Musk? No, but you know, I don't know. I think there's not that we wouldn't play it, but I'm just saying, like, it's something to consider, like who you're offering that money to, and are you selling out? You know, I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's as black and white as it.
This
could be.
This is interesting, and if you guys want to go down this road, we were having a discussion a few days ago on the show where we were talking about some of the band, the Rida. I'm going to say it wrong. The comedy festival that happened in Saudi Arabia.
Oh yeah.
So we were talking about that, and the larger conversation to have isn't just who went; it's why is Saudi Arabia infiltrating US or just Western entertainment in general, right? The next WrestleMania is going to be in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Like, this is bigger than just a comedy festival. There's massive concerts in Saudi Arabia and places like the UAE. We recently looked up who the top 10 grossing concert tours were, and Coldplay was number one. They didn't do any shows in the States. It was like the UAE, Australia, New Zealand, you know, and they sold some ridiculous amount of tickets. I think it was like over 1 million tickets they sold. Shakira hasn't played in the States and she sold 1 million tickets. Crazy numbers that we're seeing, but there is an influence of places like Saudi Arabia. Recently, Radiohead caught a lot of flack for playing in Israel when people didn't want to play in Israel.
Well, they're Zionists, so there's that.
Then there's that. And Rainbow's great record, but God damn,
you're making me think of the Family Guy weenie in the butt thing.
Weenie in the butt, but they don't have this.
We coming for you, nigga.
They don't have that. There's so many more that they don't have.
It's interesting, like that. I mean, there's a lot of bands I know that do not want to come and play in the U.S. at this point. And a lot that are being shut out. What is it? The CY Fest up in LA? They're not going to have it for the next couple of years, specifically because there's so many problems with bringing bands into LA from outside of the US. So I do wonder how that's going to impact other places. Are a lot more bands going to start coming to Mexico? Because that'd be nice.
But you know as well as I know, you get paid in pesos unless you make out some kind of agreement that they're going to pay you in US dollars. But
that's
true.
That's true. But
that's the reality of, you know, for those that don't know, when you start playing internationally, it's like, you paying me in US dollars, you paying me in like Brazilian AIs. Like, what am I?
Yeah.
What am
I think we need to get paid in Bitcoin.
You're trying to
get
catch
paid in the new Trump Aoki whatever fucking Bitcoin
to a coin,
shit coin.
But how I'm sure there's places you guys wouldn't play, right? Like, oh, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. how much research do you do into the bands that you're playing with? Because I've seen people, kind of back to the internet thing and the lust for righteousness and cancellation.
Mm.
I feel confident by saying you guys probably don't go down the list to see all the bands that you're playing with and read about their politics, who they voted for, what they did in the third grade, and what they said on their first ever social media post when they were 15. Are you a little leery of bands that you play with for these big festivals, or are you just on the bill and just do your thing?
Well, there was an incident with Off Limits last year, a festival in Mexico City that Agonista was going to play, and a band that have some questionable politics and seeming ties to neo-Nazi shit, and the promoters, I don't think, were very aware of it, and they were made aware, and one of their big headliners basically said, "We're not playing the fest if this band stays on it," and they were kicked off. So,
oh wow, okay.
But so it does happen. I don't know about the fest that we're playing this weekend in Florida. Some of the bands that we're playing with, I am familiar with. Some people I know well, going back many years. There are certainly some that I have just heard of and honestly haven't really looked into. I trust and I hope that with an event like the fest that they're not putting us with somebody with really questionable politics. But yeah, you're right to say that I am not deep diving into, who's on the lineup. And
it's ridiculous.
And
I mean, do you know how hard it is to get like 4 grown men in a room that have lives?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. And you want me to do background research? You fuck right off.
I think like even pre-internet, the Locust was on tour. We played the Milwaukee Metal Fest.
Oof.
And there was there was questionable shit on there for sure, like some rendition of the Mentors, which is fucking probably alarming and right off the bat. But I remember with Joseph Karam, the synth player, and the Locust, and I were trolling around the merch area, and there was just like record labels selling white power shit, and I it's like, what are you gonna do at that point? So of course we trolled them, and we said things then that I would not like to repeat, but we were just trying to fuck with them, at that point. And it's like, fucking couple scrawny dudes are gonna talk shit to these like shitbag white power, record label dudes or whatever at a festival. I mean, it was amusing, but it wasn't our fault. It wasn't like we were aligning, and the whole thing was a fucking pile of shit festival regardless. So I think that it, do your own research, but you can't be 100% accurate. I mean, there's so many fucking problems with us, man. Like, so it's bound to happen. You put on a festival, and I'm sure there is a problematic band, no matter what, on a huge list of bands. I mean, Fest, I can't even fucking read the thing. There's so many band names on there. It's like the font size is so small.
And they have those metal fonts or whatever, where it just looks like
no. Fest is just one font, but there's so many that I'm like, but yes, I can't read those other ones either. I do wear glasses, so like I can't read half that shit. So don't hold me accountable for playing with the fucking white power band.
It's not like you were excited about it. So sometimes it's always a scene from the movie Green Room, ladies and gentlemen. That's just what it is.
I think that's a pretty good movie, for horror movie. But I also think, like, in reality, there's no way that an anarcho crust band is going to be like, oh, let's set up and play this last minute show where there's clearly neo-Nazis and cover Nazi punks fuck off. That would never happen. They wouldn't get to that point. But it's a great movie.
It is a great movie, and no, that wouldn't happen. But I have been in places where I was told to leave. I was like, but you booked me. Like, I didn't. But that's the door. And if you want to get out of here quickly,
I've been thrown out. I've been beaten up. I've been maced. I've all kinds of shit. And I think I've survived. I've had bottles broken on my head. And not that it's fun, but I like the fact that I can achieve that element of hostility just by playing music and doing it in a righteous manner. Like I'll stand behind myself and my bandmates 100%. And if that's the outcome of a show, then so be it.
When you look up the band, it is labeled as artcore. I feel confident you guys didn't sit down together with cigarette holders and berets. Artcore. Someone gave you that label. When did you first find out you guys were called Artcore? How do you feel about that title?
Artcore.
Do you care at all about that title?
I think I read it somewhere in the description, maybe on Wikipedia or something, and I think I didn't really give any thought to it beyond I read the sentence, it went into my head, and it went right back out.
It doesn't make you difficult at parties.
Yeah, I mean,
but I'm an artcore artist. As an artcore artist,
no, I mean it's the same as screamo or whatever, anything else. Like it just to me, it's like whatever. It's just a dumb label. If people want to call it that, like, cool, whatever. But that was never, and it's still not my approach to it.
I found it on 4chan. No, I never heard that term. I never heard that term until today.
Really?
I've avoided it successfully.
I never heard it until I was like, "Hey, John, I want to get you guys on the show."
I think it says it like on the Wikipedia entry for us. It says something about artcore. Like I know I saw it somewhere, but again, it's just one of those things. Like I didn't really digest it in and think about it much. It was just kind of like, okay, whatever. Here's another descriptor that is somebody else's idea of what we are.
Because it's interesting, actually, like talking to the band and hearing where their influences come from and hearing the motivations behind the music. Because I don't know if it's necessarily "quote unquote" arty, because there's something pretentious that that comes from saying artcore, and I don't think you guys are trying to be or even come off, even sonically, pretentious at all. Has anyone ever called you guys that?
I called myself that. Well, because like sometimes people will say, "What kind of music you play? Are you a musician?" And I would like to identify as an artist, and that sounds like I'm an artist, but I'm actually saying like, no, I'm an artist because I have fucking no idea what music even is, and I can't read music. I don't know music theory. Therefore, I think it's just art, and which gives me like this sort of platform to do it incorrectly by scholastic standards. But when I say I'm an artist, I do sound like a fuckhead, So then I just say I don't know. I do pranks or comedy, and then that even opens up a whole other. Because I mean, it is kind of like comical what we do. Like, musically speaking, it's absurd, and it's not always like enjoyment, like to sit and go like, oh, let's listen to this abrasive, kind of odd time signature, fucking jarring notes and shit. Like there's a comical aspect to that for sure.
But it does become somewhat, I don't want to say popular, but it catches on to a certain segment of the hardcore community with bands like Dillinger Escape Plan, a lot of the Southern bands. We were talking earlier about like Every Time I Die, and all those bands where there is a lot of chaos and unpredictability in the music, which you guys are doing years before these bands even come out. I don't know if they were directly influenced by you guys. Maybe you've met them and they've said those things to you, because music traveled very differently in the pre-internet days. And you're talking about physical media having to travel through cassette trading and and all the other forms of the way we got our music moons ago. How does that feel to see kind of years later other people, I don't want to say picking up the mantle, but doing something similar to what you guys are doing and having a little more success at it? Is it frustrating, or is it just like a head like, oh, well, that's good for them?
I think that like we weren't a start of a thing. So like no matter what, there's like you can say like, oh, this thing is successful after us, but like we were successful to some extent of what came before us. So you know, I think that it's just I don't know, I find irrelevance in it, but I also think that you know, like you referenced like Dillinger Escape Plan, which is a good example, like where I think it's I like them. I think that their success is confusing to me because it isn't, you know, quote unquote enjoyable music. Like and it isn't chaos. I hate how people are like it's chaos or controlled chaos. No, it's totally structured in our brains, and there's a way that it should be played, and there's a way that it should be performed, especially with something like, you know, Dillinger is obviously way more complicated musically, but it's not chaos, and it's not necessarily something that you would just inherently enjoy. You have to kind of focus and think about it. It's not like background music where it's like some ambient thing. There's something there. There's communication in a fucked up time signature. There's communication in a fucked up timbre of notes through whatever. You know, even with like the sound of our guitars, like those aren't like normal chords, or you know, there's like jacked up weird discordant chords to kind of evoke an emotion. So I don't know, I think that like chaos is a weird word to use. Chaos would be, I guess, more equivalent to like noise or free jazz or something that doesn't have that has zero structure. There's an immense amount of structure with Swing Kids or Dillinger or whoever. So I don't know. Again, going like I'm just trying to dismantle everything you're throwing out at us. To be honest.
No, I mean the whole purpose of this series that we're doing here, you know, what the hell is to kind of look at the idea of genre and say that these are just marketing categories for people, and it doesn't necessarily define the music that you're listening to, because of the motivations behind the people making it. You know, they all aren't the same. I think there's a lot of differences within what someone might deem artcore. I think bands I've had probably could have played with you guys, and no one would have called us all artcore. And some of these are post factos as well.
I think like going back full circle to asking us about questions about San Diego would make sense, because for me and for all of us actually growing up and playing in Swing Kids and like especially with Jose and I in Struggle, like before it was like we were playing with hip hop bands and reggae bands and funk bands, and you'd play with whoever, and we were part of a community, and it wasn't the same music, but it was part of the same community. We were sharing a moment, we were communicating with each other. It was something. So it didn't matter that you're hip hop and we're hardcore. We're here to do a thing. We're all artists, and then therefore like genres are irrelevant. And I think that's, I mean, fuck, we could look at like even like shit like Crash Worship and stuff, you know, like Jose played with them. Like that's a thing where good luck defining that. Good luck putting a genre label on that. And that's where we came from, and that's how we grew up. Like not saying like I mean, I remember Struggle playing with the band called Tijuana No, like and it made total sense. Totally not by the industry standards at all, but to us, it made sense to align ourselves with that band and who they were and what they represented. And so I think that was way more important. Yeah. Anyhow.
No, I think this is important to talk about, was again because I'm not a huge fan of genre monikers, and this whole series is to kind of break the mold of these genre monikers.
Definitely kind of you know, back in the mid 90s when we played, it was, you know, a band with 4 or 5 bands, or a bill with 4 or 5 bands, whatever, and none of them sounded alike or the same. And now more often than not, when I go to a show, it's 3, 4, 5 bands that all pretty well sound very similar to each other. There's not there's not a lot of, you know, or if it's a band that's like the odd one out, there will be a bunch of people that just walk out when they're playing and not paying. Just, you know, like, oh, I'll skip this band because they're nothing like the other 3 bands that I actually came to see, who all sound alike. And it's very strange to me.
Do you think a lot of that has to do with the goals that you have when you're younger and you're doing music? Like now, I don't know if people are influenced by the people near them. Like you said, Drive Like Jehu was a big influence on you guys. probably a band that you guys saw early on, and you're like, if we could play a room like them, or if we could do this thing, or if we can do, right, that you had something you could physically see and look at and be like, maybe if we could get that far, you could compare yourself to something like that. And it feels like people are comparing themselves to whoever's at the top, whoever they feel is at the top, right? So when you say all the bands sound alike, well, it's like, yeah, because they're watching the Instagram reels of hardcore band X that's at the top. So let me get the outfit that they have, we'll get the gear that they have, we'll do all the things that they do, because that's where we want to be.
That, yeah, I mean that is also a very strange thing where, there's such an access to all kinds of different music and ideas and everything that, I mean, I guess, probably the algorithms work against that to some degree. But, when I was first buying records, I would go hang out at the record store all day and just, hope that I heard something that sounded really cool, and then go meekly ask the person behind the counter, "What is this you're playing?" Very nervously and sheepishly. And now, I can go on Instagram and hear a million different things. And it's weird to me that someone would take and be so entrenched in like a narrow identity when they have options for so much more to draw and create from now.
Yeah, no, that's true.
So.
Thank you guys for talking to me for so long. I have a couple more quick questions for you.
Mm-hmm.
Jose, John, JP, is Swing Kids a band that has to be experienced live?
No one's gonna. Yeah.
I would say for me, yes.
Mm-hmm. I wish I could experience it live. There's I'm very blessed. I'm very privileged to play with like some of the best drummers ever to exist, and Jose is one of them. And I am very unfortunate that they're always like usually to my back. So it's like I don't get to see Jose perform, and I would like to see that. I think that there's no way that the energy that Jose has as a drummer and as an artist, let's just say that as an artist, like, and if like sound like a fucking arrogant asshole, but he, you can't capture that on a recording. And when I hear our music, I'm the weak link in the band, musically speaking, and I'm fine with that. I think that when we perform live, there's an immense amount of energy and emotion and passion that I think you have to see in real time, and I think that makes it cool, and that's why I think we still end up playing a couple shows here and there, because it does hold validity. We're not playing. I hate using the word reunion, but playing these shows for like financial gain, because we barely break even. It is really for an artistic expression, and I think that I appreciate people wanting to buy records and now cassettes or whatever the fuck, or stream us, like unknowingly, how like on Spotify or whatever. But I think that seeing the band live makes it's just a whole other beast.
In closing, looking at today's world where state repression, surveillance, and culture wars dominate, what do you think art and music still play in unsettling power? Can noise still be revolutionary?
I will say this. I appreciate the question. Appreciate the fact that we're looking at the ways in which cultural workers can shape minds and cultures. I also think the question should account for what the people in those subcultures are actually doing. Mention was made of Fugazi earlier. They have a thing about never mind what's been selling, it's what you're buying. I don't really give a fuck what band is doing or what they're not doing. I care more about what the individual and the band is doing. And I think about what Justin is doing with his label, has been doing for a long time, not making a lot of money. John, instead of living in San Diego, lives in Tijuana and he's doing stuff down there. You know, I'm a therapist. I work with people who are challenged with addiction. So I think the question assumes that the power that hopefully will be known for is mainly the cultural aspect, because that's what we see. But I always think it's important to look at the person and what they're actually doing. I don't care. The most important thing that was ever said to me in recovery was, we don't give a fuck what you think, we care what you do. And that's how I've been sober for 15 years. So to me, it doesn't matter what I say. I can say I want to be sober, but if I'm being a dick, I'm not sober. It's what I'm doing. And I think in these kind of conversations, we tend to focus too much on the what's been selling and not what you're buying.
Nothing to add. It's kind of perfect if you want to leave on Jose.
Well, I mean, there's one thing that that comes to mind. It's just that I feel like it is important to keep these kinds of expressions through music going, in order to how did I come to my understanding of the world today, and how that translates into where I live, organizations that I have volunteered with over the years, work that I've done to help other people. It all stemmed from the music that I was exposed to, like punk rock, and it got me interested in and also understanding of the world beyond my own little part in it. And so, I think it's important, and something I know that you and I have talked about aside from this is how there seems to be very conservative streak among younger people today, much more so than when we were younger. And that has been something that is a concern to me. And so I do feel like artistic music expressions that offer something outside of the norm are very important.
As a person that spent years of his life toiling in quote unquote obscurity, making weird music, I am with you 100%. Thank you, guys.
That Massive Attack in Bjork mix.
Oh, Le Fin Absolute du Monde.
Okay.
The absolute end of the world.
That sounds like a true artist.
Oh man, you want to talk about pretension, man? My nose couldn't be higher in the air.
Hey, next time you're in Oakland, swing by, man.
Hopefully I'll be up next month.
Hit me up.
I definitely want to. I think we know a lot of the same people.
Yeah, I think we do. We'll chat, man. I'd love to chat with you some more.
Are you guys playing any shows in San Diego?
Nothing's booked right now.
At band practice right now.
Yeah.
Swing on by.
Swing on.
You want me to walk up? Can I take an Uber?
Yep.
Are you way up north, or are you in like regular San Diego?
Oh, we're in City Heights.
Is that like regular San Diego?
I can't afford to be up north.
Okay, because if you're way up north, I'm like, oh, dude, I can't take an Uber there.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I'll be playing some Swing Kids music after the main show at 6:00 before we watch the movie Toxic Avenger. If you guys aren't rocking and rolling, you guys are more than welcome to join us to watch Toxic Avenger. It will be a good fucking time. I'm sure you guys haven't watched that movie in a while. And what else do you guys have planned? I know you're going to Florida for a festival. Then what else?
Austin Saturday.
Austin. Talk about nose in the air. There's two places. That's Portland and that's Austin. You guys know who you are. You guys know you think you're better than everybody. Well, enjoy your time in Austin, fellas. Take lots of pictures. And John, I want to hear your stories when you come back. Maybe we can hang out I don't know how. I haven't seen you at that place ever since that day. I guess you don't come back that way.
Like 20 minutes away from each other. So
Yeah, we gotta hang out. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see some of you later this evening. And we are out.